My plan today was very simple. I was going to go and get what is voted the best sandwich in America and go to the zoo. And all of that went off without a hitch. Absolutely lovely time. But when I came home, I made the mistake of turning on my computer and typing on my keyboard JW. And their website pulled up, and there was a new video that dropped that made my jaw drop like actual Looney Tunes style. I felt like my tongue rolled out, and it was like the red carpet. There was something hiding in the new release section for videos that was stinkier than that 3-month-old tuna salad that had somehow managed my weekly purges in the back of the refrigerator. It is absolutely wild. So, yeah, let's talk about it. Hello and welcome back to the JW Thoughts channel. My name is Wally, and today we are looking at another morning worship talk, which is one of the most contradictory things I've ever heard Watchtower say, ever. Honestly, I would be less shocked if my April Fool's prank video turned out to be real. That, I think, would be less shocking than what he's about to say in this talk. It really blew me away. But anyway, don't forget to drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. Dropping a like helps it get out to more people on YouTube and helps the cause, and I very much appreciate it. If you do enjoy content like this, consider subscribing, as there will be much more going ahead in the future. With all of that being said, let's hear how the governing body are not like the Pharisees, but more like Jesus. Kind of.
The governing body could be likened to the voice of Jesus, the head of the congregation. So when we willingly submit to the faithful slave, we're ultimately submitting to Jesus' authority and direction.
Hold on a second. What did he just say?
The governing body could be likened to the voice of Jesus, the head of the congregation. So when we willingly submit to the faithful slave, we're ultimately submitting to Jesus' authority and direction.
Huh. That's interesting, because I have a distinct memory of Jeffrey Jackson being questioned under oath that he swore to God on with his hand on the Bible, and him saying this.
And do you see yourselves as Jehovah God's spokespeople on earth?
That, I think, would seem to be quite presumptuous to say that we are the only spokesperson that God is using.
The governing body could be likened to the voice of Jesus, the head of the congregation.
So just to give you a little bit more context, he's talking about the scripture in Matthew where it's talking about this yoke, using farming terms because that would have been relatable to the people. And he's saying, you know, my yoke is light and blah, blah, blah. A little bit more on that with the rest of this talk. But this is an absolutely wild thing to just come out and say that the governing body equals Jesus. I know they've said it before in magazines and things, but I don't remember them saying it in such a blatant way that it's just a one-to-one, you know, whatever. If you think it's coming from the governing body, it may as well be coming from Jesus, which raises a whole mess of questions when it comes to Tony Morris being removed as a governing body member. Does that mean that up until the day that he was removed, his word should have been seen as coming from Jesus? Oh, I see the way out of it. It's the governing body as a collective, not as individuals. But that's a bunch of stinky horseradish manure. Like, that is such a weaselly way to get out of this, I think, an honest, genuine question. And the thing that is curious to me, if you guys don't know or haven't heard about it, I didn't do a video on it, but I figured most of you guys had, they actually went back and removed all of Tony Morris's morning worship talks that were on jw.org.
They will vanish like smoke. So I thought this would be a nice memory aid, this verse stay in the mind. Here's what Jehovah's promising.
So why were they removing things that Tony Morris had said off of their website if there wasn't some type of problem? We don't know if this problem was because of a behavior thing, a doctrinal thing, just a disagreement. Watchtower is still completely silent about this, so we don't really know. But it does call into question statements like these. If governing body members can be removed, if they can have at least a portion of their talks wiped from the memory of JW Broadcasting, jw.org, doesn't that call into question if they're actually being led by Jesus, and if we should say, hey, this is a one-to-one comparison. Jesus equals governing body. And I think that, I say this often, I would be more offended if I was a Christian. This seems to be more insulting if you are a follower and believer and lover of Jesus and are trying to be a good Christian. This would be really annoying to hear this dumb idiot come out and say, well, Jesus was cool, but you want to know who's really cool? Those governing body members. That's where it's at.
Well, back to Matthew 11:29. It says, if we take that yoke, we will find refreshment for ourselves. That sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Relaxing, luxurious, sweet refreshment. But that's not the intent. A yoke does not represent a vacation. A yoke in and of itself implies work. A farmer does not put cattle in a yoke and send them out to graze in a refreshing pasture. He puts them in a yoke to accomplish work.
Come to me, all you who are toiling and loaded down, and I will refresh you. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am mild-tempered and lowly in heart, and you will find refreshment for yourselves? Refreshment. You know, honestly, reading this Bible, Watchtower doesn't really care about the pages in the Bible. They don't care about the sayings of Jesus. This is so annoying. Shout outs to my Christian friends. I hope I do right by you guys, but I gotta be honest. They just take the pages of the Bible, rip them out, and wipe their ass with it, and don't care at all about these sacred words of God. So if you look in any other Bible translation, instead of it using the word refresh, it uses the word rest, because the meaning is obvious. Jesus is saying that if you follow him, he's not going to put any burden on you. The idea behind it is you will get rest. So this goober's like, hey, but he's still talking about a yoke, and a yoke isn't meant to be restful. It's meant to be put to work. It's meant to accomplish something. No. Watchtower wants to use the Bible as a weapon against people to get them to do stuff for free.
Well, Jesus now has authority in heaven. So the resurrected anointed one's refreshment does not mean floating on a cloud, strumming a harp, as Christendom sometimes suggests. Jesus' personality did not change when he went to heaven, and a yoke refers to meaningful work. But Jesus is mild-tempered, so that work is kindly and refreshing.
They really never miss an opportunity at taking a random dig at Christendom, but in this case, I think Christendom has it right. What else would paradise be? Doesn't that just imply, restful, peace, luxuriating? I mean, can you imagine that you work? Okay, you have to work so hard, make all of these sacrifices during this life, and then you finally get the reward. And then the first thing when you go to heaven is you standing in line at the labor works or labor ready to figure out what job you are going to go to. Have you guys ever seen the Bee movie? It would be like that. You finally get to go to heaven, and then they have to say, okay, well, this is what you're going to be. So get in there, you worker bee. It's absolutely ridiculous how they just make everything about being a religious person or a spiritual person or having a relationship with God. miserable. They make the entire experience completely horrible for everyone.
And for those of us on earth, refreshment does not mean lounging in our favorite easy chair with the beverage of our choice. We have work to do. But the yoke is padded, it's kindly, we don't chafe under it.
You have sensitive nipples, they chafe. So they become more sensitive. So they chafe more. I take precautions.
We don't chafe under it. Jesus is mild-tempered. Now back to Matthew 11:29. Did you notice Jesus said, "And learn from me"? Why did he include those words? The sentence would have made perfect sense without them. But he specifically said, "And learn from me." Now, why might that be significant?
Well, I can tell you why it would be significant. Because at the time, the people were being oppressed by the religious leaders of that day. They had heaps of all of these rules and regulations, and it was a burden trying to be religious or be spiritual. And Jesus was trying to set something different, a precedence that was based off of, love and kindness, refreshment, rest, not trying to make people's lives a living hell. And this is the thing that is so irritating, is that Watchtower demonstrates that they are like those religious leaders. They are the ones that are always demanding more and more and more. Now, even if, which he goes and tries to spin this, that, okay, well, we know that we have work to do, but at least it's, kind. There's some cushioning. There's no chafing that's going to happen here. Shout outs to Andy Bernard and the Fun Run episode of The Office. Absolute classic. But anyway, they are the ones that are causing the chafing. They don't want any padding. And I thought of a video that I think is a really good demonstration of exactly how Watchtower isn't happy with just giving a ridiculous amount to them. And it's a video where I'll play some clips of it here.
I do my best to stick to a spiritual routine too. Oh no, the meeting for field service. I've got to get going. And once we're done here, I'm off into the woods for a long hike. It's like the only place I can recharge my batteries. Andrew suggests that we first do some of my return visits. Well, I'm afraid I don't have any. Sorry, Andrew. Maybe next weekend. I like our meetings, but I wish I'd prepared better. Now the study is over, and again I couldn't comment. Man, I need to be at the cinema in 10 minutes. Oh yeah, thanks Edgar, my field service report. My group overseer always has to remind me. Last week, he was appointed as a ministerial servant. I'm not surprised at all. He is a great example, especially for me. I wonder why I haven't qualified to be a ministerial servant. Wow, Andrew's always busy for the congregation, helping the friends, taking care of our older brothers and sisters. He really cares for them. How come I never think of that?
This is one of the most realistic dramas I think Watchtower has ever made, because that's exactly what it's like. Here you have a young guy. He on a Saturday morning, instead of sleeping in or going out, hanging out with his friends or something, he is riding around on his bicycle, trying to bang on people's doors, asking if they want Jesus to come in them. And then on a weekday night, instead of, resting and relaxing after work, making some good food, enjoying a movie, no, he's over at the meeting. And then after the meeting, he's like, "Oh, I gotta get to the cinema." Well, not even that. Well, you don't forget to turn in your field service. And then after you're done doing the field service, "Hey, can you help me unload these boxes?" And after you're done with the boxes, "Hey, do you think you could stay and help vacuum?" Boom, you miss your meeting. And then he compares himself to his other friend who's always going above and beyond, and now he's a ministerial servant. This is what it's like to be under the yoke of Watchtower. It is a heavy burden that not even doing all of that is good enough. They're saying that this guy isn't good enough. He needs to be doing more, which is an absolute crime against humanity, that this person is doing any Jehovah's Witness activity, full stop. But the fact that they're saying, well, I mean, look at you, you're a young guy. I mean, couldn't you help with some building projects? Don't you? I mean, couldn't you help with some Kingdom Hall maintenance for free? I mean, couldn't you be spending more of your free time preparing so you can give some comments? This was a good representation of how they are always trying to push people. More. And yet this whole fake facade of, well, we need to learn from Jesus because, his yoke was kindly and light and it was meant for rest. I'm not even going to use that word refreshment. That is not what Watchtower does at all. They are constantly pushing. Instead of being like Jesus, they are the total opposite. They are standing behind those cows, those Jehovah's Witnesses, and just called Jehovah's Witnesses cows, unintentional. But they're whipping them, they're just like, more, come on, faster. There's another field over there. What are you guys doing? All the while not doing any work themselves. While the images were downloading from camera to computer, I made a horrible mistake. I opened up Twitter. Yes, I know, I did the evil thing and I went on Twitter, but I couldn't be happier that I did. If you are not following, if you are someone that goes on Twitter regularly, if you're not following Larchwood20, you absolutely need to. I'll put a link in the description of this video, but they have some absolute banger tweets. Really good stuff. But this one really tops them all, especially in the context of what we've been talking about in this video. So let me read what Watchtower said in a September 15th, 1948 Watchtower.
Gracious.
For any religious leader on earth to lay claim to the office of personally representing and substituting for Jesus Christ, and then to take the course exactly opposite to what Jesus took on earth, is wholly inconsistent. It shows that his claims or pretenses are false. Yeah, so I guess the Watchtower in the 40s, maybe they were kind of hip to the idea of actually following Jesus, but fast forward 80 years or so and hoo-wee!
Jesus said, my load is light. Well, what had the disciples learned previously from the religious leaders? 23:4. They bind up, not light, but heavy loads and put them on the shoulders of men. And if you glance at verse 5, you'll see that they like to piously be seen by men. They like the most prominent seats at meals in the synagogue.
The governing body has always felt a keen responsibility to live up to Jesus' command, feed my lambs, shepherd my little sheep. Today's technology makes the governing body feel like family. But did the worldwide brotherhood in times past enjoy such a strong bond with the governing body?
A governing body member would fly to the convention city for the opening day, catch a flight to another convention city, and then return to the original city so that he could speak on the closing day.
The governing body made a loving exception and decided we could have a school for Kingdom Evangelized with 2 classrooms.
Under the direction of the governing body,
the governing body has directed.
The governing body had 2 clear objectives in mind with these changes. Had a direction given to us from the governing body.
After the governing body released a revised English edition of the New World Translation.
At the direction of the governing body,
the governing body has thus far approved.
So we can follow his direction or whatever direction we receive from the governing body.
The governing body has decided that
in 2001, with the governing body's approval,
the governing body has approved the annual meeting. Jeffrey Jackson of the governing body was the chairman.
In fact, the governing body has directed me.
And if you glance at verse 5, you'll see that they like to piously be seen by men. Piously be seen by men. Piously be seen by men.
They may pressure us to change our scriptural beliefs, but we're certainly not going to do that.
They're pretending, Truman. Do you understand? Everybody's pretending.
Oh, yes, the governing body could never be guilty like those religious leaders of wanting prominent positions. They didn't start an entire TV channel so that way they can just be on the TV sets of everyday Americans. Boy, howdy, I don't know if this guy is like a secret apostate and just saying the most ridiculous things you can imagine, because this just looks, or he's incredibly dumb. But this absolutely is hilarious, because what are you talking about? You're describing what the governing body does. Hopefully I'll probably put in a little montage of all the times that, they're always talking about the governing body, 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 over and over. Every time they're introduced at the assembly, I think we noticed when we were doing the crusade that they always said, and this is a member of the governing body. This is a member. They always like to be at the head of the table. They are these pious religious leaders that they so despise. It's like the old line in Batman. What was it?
Okay, fine. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Learn from Jesus. He said, "But the greatest among you must be your minister." Do you remember an entrenched personality flaw of the apostles? They often defaulted into arguing about who's the greatest one among us. They likely learned that from the religious leaders' poor example. So it makes sense in our text today that Jesus pleaded, "Learn from me. And in fact, I am different. Learn. I am mild-tempered and lowly in heart." Learn from Jesus, including the fact that he was mild-tempered and lowly in heart.
I like to think that there's some sort of parallel universe where he was actually giving this talk to the governing body. Here's someone that's been in the organization their entire life, has been giving decades of his life, all of his valuable things to Watchtower with no return on investment. And as he gets older and older, and the bell doth toll, you kind of start thinking, maybe we need to just be less of a burden on people's lives. Learn from Jesus. If he was actually saying that directly to the governing body, it wouldn't surprise me even in the slightest. So I guess I'll have to agree with him here and leave a message for the governing body. Learn from Jesus. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. This one might be a little bit scuffed just because I started recording it at 6 p.m. and still have to edit it, but I'll figure it out. That's not your problem, it's mine. If you're still around, don't forget to drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. Stay safe, be kind, and don't forget to smile. And you better have a good-ass day.